Hello, I'm Charly and today I'm going to be doing a book talk for The Rest of Us Just Live Here by the one and only Patrick Ness. Yes! So before I say anything, I just want to thank April from Aprilius Maximus one last time for sending me this copy. She got this copy for review from the publisher, Walker Books, and she sent me the ARC, and I read this, I can't remember which month I read this in. June? I think it was in June. I think I read this in June. So this book just recently came out, so you can go and pick this book up if you want to. And yes, so let's get started with the review. So this book is a young adult contemporary with elements of fantasy, but it doesn't focus on the fantasy, it focuses on the contemporary storylines. And it follows our main character, Mikey, and he just wants to live a normal life. He's in this fantasy type world where these indie kids, as they call them, these are like the typical young adult fantasy dystopian main characters, are like just doing their thing and no one really cares. They just want to graduate from high school before their school gets blown up again, which is basically what it says on the back. So this book just follows a group of friends and them trying to live a normal life, but it explores a lot of mental health issues, and it's just, I can't really explain it. It's a very unique type of story, and that's one of the things I really loved about it, is how unique it is, and just it has so much diversity in it. The main character suffers with OCD. There's also an African American girl. There's also sexuality explored in this book, and there's also a girl who suffers from the eating disorder and another girl who suffers with anxiety. So there's just a lot of diversity in this book, and that the one downside that I had with this book was that in the start it kind of seems like a lot of this diversity type stuff was kind of forced in just too much at the same time. And I know that sounds kind of bad, like me saying that, but it just like you saw how much I just listed. It just seemed like a lot was trying to, like, that there was a lot that was trying to be forced in there, but that, like, I got past that really quickly, and it wasn't enough for me to take off any star, like a star or half a star. So, and I was like really being critical of this book because everyone knows that Patrick Ness is my favourite author, and so I want people to still be able to trust my reviews and not just think that I'm going to give every Patrick Ness book a 5 stars because Patrick Ness is my favourite author. So I was trying to be critical of this, but I still gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, and I promised you I was being critical. So I highly recommend this book. If you haven't read any Patrick Ness books, however, and I will link you to my I have a Patrick Ness author discussion video, and I will link that in the corner. You should check that out because I recommend that you read either the Chaos Walking trilogy or A Monster Calls before you read this book. But if you've read either of those books, then I would definitely recommend you read this if you enjoyed those. This is probably my favourite would be Chaos Walking, and then A Monster Calls, and then this with More Than This are probably equal. So all of those books I gave 5 out of 5 stars. So this is equal with More Than This. This book really just didn't disappoint me, and I was just so excited for this book to come out, and then I got to read it early and it didn't disappoint me. I was really scared of it disappointing me, and it didn't, and I was so happy. This book is hilariously written. Like just you can tell it's Patrick Ness within the first, like, this is page 13, and the quote is, "The wind picks up a little more," and then in brackets, "Terribly sorry," I imagine it saying, "Apparently, the wind is British. Wondering how it got all the way over here." Like, no one can make wind funny except for Patrick Ness. Out here, people either grow organic turnips or vast fields of marijuana. My parents do daffodils. Another thing that I really love was just the way that mental illness is dealt with. So I think the best way that I figured it to kind of explain why I love this book so much is that it takes this typical sort of young adult plotline and it kind of like reverses it, kind of, because it makes the characters with all these superpowers that are fighting all these supernatural creatures just kind of seem uninteresting, and it's like meh, because the start of every chapter starts with this sort of like this. It says chapter the first, and then it has this little paragraph that's in italics, and that's just describing what's going on in the indie kid story. It's like a little summary and it kind of gives off this sarcastic sort of tone. It's like, yeah, the indie kids are doing this, we don't really care about them, let's just get them out of the way so that we can focus on the really interesting story, which is just about the side characters, and I think that is just awesome. Yes. So that's all for the non-spoilery section of this book talk. I just want to give a quick trigger warning for OCD and eating disorders mainly, I think, especially the OCD, because it is the main character that suffers with OCD. So if you're sensitive to any of those things, then just maybe be a bit careful going into this book, but I highly recommend this book. So go read it and then come back and discuss with us when you're done. Yes, so goodbye, people who have not read this book, and if you haven't read it, then you should read it. Just read it, okay, and then come back, okay? Okay, bye-bye, bye-bye. Go. Go, go. Alright, so I haven't really planned this book talk out. I planned out that non-spoilery section, but I haven't planned out this part. I don't know how many people are watching because this book just came out, so I don't know if anyone's read this book. But I do have a little piece of paper. I did read this book a little while ago. I was meant to do my book talk ages ago, but I didn't. But I have a little piece of paper with notes on it. So let's see what this piece of paper says. And my bird is making a lot of noise, so I'm going to close my bedroom door. I'll be back. One of my notes just says brother-sister bond with a smiley face. So I really just loved the bond between Mikey and, is her name Mel? I can't remember the characters' names, but their bond I really loved, because you don't see enough brother-sister bonds, like strong bonds in young adult. I feel like I haven't seen a lot of that at all, so I really liked that aspect of the book, and the way that Mikey like helped her with her eating disorder, how she like at one point in the book she really was struggling and she just needed him to eat her lunch for her, I think it was, and like he just understands and just deals with it really well, and I just really loved it. I found Jared to be a really weird character with his like healing abilities and how he just like has this weird connection with cats, so it kind of like brought in the fantasy aspect into the contemporary. So I'm just going to go through some of these sticky notes. So the one scene that really stuck with me the most out of this book, I think, was the therapist scene where Mikey went and saw this therapist because his OCD was getting really bad. And a line from that scene that I really liked was this one. Mikey says, "I hate myself. I feel like an idiot saying it because blah blah, teen angst, boo-hoo, but I do. I hate myself, almost all the time. I try not to tell anyone because I don't want to burden them, but I feel like I'm falling farther and farther away from them. Like the well's getting deeper and I'm running out of energy to climb it, and any minute now, any second, it's going to stop being worth even trying." So that just sums up how I have felt when I have gone through hard times, just not wanting to talk about it because everyone's like, oh, teen angst, and just get over it and that stuff, and just, this book is just like really important. And then something that the therapist says back is, cancer patients don't call chemotherapy a failure, diabetics don't call insulin a failure, and that's when she's talking about him accepting medication, and him, Mikey said that kind of feels like he's failing and not strong enough, and I often feel not strong enough as well. And that's just a thing with a lot of people with mental illnesses. They're kind of just portrayed as weak, like they can't deal with their problems. That's why they use mental illness as an excuse, and I just really hate that. Another thing that really stuck with me was this line by Mikey, and he says, "The mistake of every adult, though, is to think that darkness and hardship aren't important to young people because we'll grow out of it. Who cares if we will? Life is happening to us now, just like it's happening to you." And that, I just really appreciated that, because I feel like a lot of adults kind of downplay younger people's problems because they're only young, and every young person goes through this, and I'm sure everyone around you is going through it. Like, that doesn't matter. I'm still feeling this, and that is just like, that just, oh. And the last thing that I wanted to say is, you know the little summaries of the things that are happening with the indie kids at the start of every chapter, the italics parts? That reminded me of the Mortal Instruments, and it kind of felt like a bit of a, like, he was being sarcastic about it. Like, probably not aimed at the Mortal Instruments, but, like, I felt like he was taking a stab at that sort of typical storyline, and I found that really funny, and I just saw the Mortal Instruments in that. So tell me down below what you saw in that. So that is all that I wanted to say about The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness. Please discuss with me down below and warn for any spoilers for the non-spoilery people. But I would love to discuss this book because I haven't talked to anyone about it because no one has read it. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye! I caught him, don't you worry. I did catch him. You can sleep. You can, what am I trying to say? You can sleep in peace. You don't have to, oh my god, I need to